Sean Strickland trains in a way that sets him apart from most fighters, focusing on raw, intense, and consistent sparring rather than overly technical or flashy routines. His daily training revolves around hard rounds in the gym, where he sharpens his pressure-based boxing, strong jab, and defensive control. Instead of avoiding damage in practice, he embraces tough sessions to prepare his mind and body for real fight conditions. His cardio is built to last, allowing him to maintain a relentless pace that slowly breaks opponents. More than just physical work, his training is deeply mental. He forces himself to stay calm under pressure and comfortable in chaos. This unfiltered, old-school approach is what makes Sean Strickland one of the toughest and most unpredictable fighters in the UFC today. Khamzat Chimaev's training is on a completely different level. From endless wrestling sessions to brutal conditioning drills, he pushes his body past limits most fighters wouldn't even attempt. This isn't just practice for him, it's war preparation. Every second in the gym is designed to break opponents before the fight even begins. Khamzat Chimaev isn't just another UFC fighter, he's a force that feels almost unreal. From the moment he stepped into the Octagon, people knew something was different. The aggression, the pressure, the way he hunts his opponents, it's not normal. Most fighters take time to build hype, but Khamzat? He became a global sensation almost overnight. And the scariest part, he's still getting better. Born in Chechnya and later representing Sweden, Khamzat's journey wasn't easy. He grew up in tough conditions, where fighting wasn't a sport, it was survival. That background shaped his mindset. When he fights, it doesn't look like competition, it looks personal. Every takedown, every punch, every submission attempt carries a level of intensity that few fighters can match. When Khamzat made his UFC debut in 2020, nobody expected what was about to happen. He didn't just win, he dominated. Then he came back just days later and did it again. 2 fights, 2 wins, barely any damage taken. Fans were shocked, analysts were confused, and fighters? They started getting nervous. Because this wasn't hype anymore, this was real. What makes Khamzat truly dangerous is his wrestling. Once he grabs you, it's like being trapped. He doesn't just take opponents down, he controls them, smashes them, and makes them look helpless. Even experienced fighters struggle to survive when they're on the ground with him. And if you think striking is the answer, think again. Khamzat hits hard, fast, and with bad intentions. One of his most talked about performances came against Li Jingliang. In that fight, Khamzat didn't even bother striking at first. He picked Li up, carried him across the octagon like it was nothing, and then submitted him. That moment went viral worldwide. It wasn't just a win, it was a statement, a warning to the entire division. Then came the war against Gilbert Burns. This fight showed a completely different side of Khamzat. For the first time, he was tested. He got hit. He had to dig deep. And instead of breaking, he pushed forward even harder. The fight turned into a brutal back-and-forth battle, proving that Khamzat isn't just a dominant fighter, he's also a warrior with heart. But Khamzat's journey hasn't been perfect. Health issues, weight cut problems, and cancelled fights have slowed his momentum at times. Critics started to question him. Some said the hype was fading. But every time he steps back into the cage, he reminds everyone why he's so dangerous. Looking ahead, the future for Khamzat Chimaev is massive. Title shots, super fights, and legendary matchups are all within reach. Fans want to see him against the best, fighters like Israel Adesanya or other top contenders. And if Khamzat continues on this path, he might not just become a champion, he could become one of the most dominant fighters in UFC history. The thing about Khamzat is simple. He doesn't just want to win, he wants to dominate. That mindset makes him exciting, unpredictable, and honestly, terrifying.
Sean Strickland shocked the MMA world after making explosive comments about the current UFC middleweight champion, Khamzat Chimaev. And what he said wasn't light trash talk. It sent waves through the entire 185-pound division. Strickland questioned Chimaev's activity, his injuries, his money, and even his motivations as champion. The comments came during an interview with ESPN MMA in February 2026, as Strickland prepared to face Anthony Hernandez at UFC Fight Night Strickland vs. Hernandez. Strickland had been out for nearly a year due to a suspension from the Nevada State Athletic Commission following a post-fight incident. But instead of focusing on his own absence, he aimed directly at the champion. Chimaev had won the middleweight belt from Dricus du Plessis at UFC 319 in August 2025. Since then, there had been no confirmed title defense. After the fight, Chimaev underwent foot surgery and dealt with a lingering shoulder injury from a previous motorcycle accident. With Ramadan approaching in early 2026, his return was expected no earlier than mid-summer, nearly a full year without defending the belt. Strickland openly questioned the situation. He suggested that Chimaev's relationship with Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov provided him with financial comfort, removing the urgency to fight regularly. Strickland implied that luxury gifts and political connections meant the champion didn't feel pressure to stay active, and that the division was suffering because of it. According to Strickland, the biggest issue wasn't just inactivity, it was the financial ripple effect. He argued that from a pure money standpoint, ranked middleweights might earn more by staying active in non-title fights than by waiting a year or more for a championship opportunity that might never materialize. If Chimaev fought once and then got injured again, as has happened before, contenders could lose 2 prime years simply waiting in line. Strickland pointed to Chimaev's pattern of post-fight injuries. After nearly every appearance, there seemed to be an MRI, an X-ray, or surgery announcement. While the injuries were real and documented, including serious COVID-19 complications in 2020 that nearly forced Chimaev into retirement, Strickland argued that every fighter deals with damage. In his view, champions push through adversity instead of freezing a division. There were also complications beyond injuries. Chimaev had faced visa restrictions tied to geopolitical tensions, which prevented him from fighting in the US for years. Those issues were reportedly resolved in 2025. He also avoids competing during Ramadan, a decision rooted in his religious observance. All of this combined to create long gaps between fights. Chimaev responded calmly in a clip recorded at Extreme Couture. He suggested Strickland never voiced these criticisms when they trained together and accused him of talking only after he left the country. Chimaev made it simple. If it's personal, come see me.
Their rivalry traces back to training sessions in Las Vegas. Chimaev has claimed he tapped Strickland multiple times in sparring, while Strickland disputes the narrative. No footage has settled the debate, and former teammates describe the sessions as competitive rather than one-sided. Still, the tension has only escalated over time, becoming deeply personal and political. Beyond the rivalry, Strickland's larger point focused on the UFC's structural handling of inactive champions. The promotion has stripped title holders before. Conor McGregor lost belts after extended inactivity. Dominic Cruz and Germaine de Randamie were also stripped under different circumstances. The precedent exists, but Chimaev's undefeated record and legitimate injuries complicate the decision. When Chimaev fights, his dominance is undeniable. His pressure, grappling, and pace make him one of the most dangerous middleweights in the world. But Strickland's criticism isn't about skill, it's about frequency. A division as stacked as middleweight cannot afford long periods of inactivity at the top. Strickland made his own stance clear. He refuses to wait. He wants to stay active, collect paychecks, and fight whoever is available. In his mind, chasing a belt that may not be defended for another year doesn't make business sense. From a pure stylistic perspective, the matchup between Sean Strickland and Khamzat Chimaev is a classic clash of sustained pressure versus explosive domination. Strickland's entire striking system revolves around his disciplined jab, tight guard, and constant forward movement. He doesn't rely on flashy combinations or knockout bursts. Instead, he slowly breaks opponents with volume, accuracy, and mental pressure. His ability to control distance with subtle footwork and straight punches could frustrate Chimaev if the fight remains standing. Strickland thrives in drawn-out battles where rhythm and pace matter more than chaos. However, the dynamic changes completely if Chimaev secures early takedowns. Chimaev's wrestling is aggressive and suffocating. Once he gets on top, he wastes no time advancing position and unloading ground and pound. The real turning point of the fight would likely come in the opening rounds. If Strickland can defend the first wave of takedown attempts and force Chimaev to work repeatedly, the fight could swing in his favor as the rounds progress. But if Chimaev establishes top control early, momentum could shift dramatically and put Strickland on the defensive for long stretches. Former UFC title challenger Chael Sonnen has analyzed the matchup from a wrestling standpoint and believes it presents serious stylistic problems for Strickland. Sonnen, who has long emphasized the importance of grappling control in 5-round fights, argues that Chimaev's ability to dictate where the fight takes place is the most decisive factor. According to Sonnen, if Chimaev commits fully to wrestling instead of engaging in prolonged striking exchanges, he could dominate minutes, secure positional control, and potentially cruise to a decision victory. Sonnen often points out that control time and octagon positioning win championship fights, and in his view, Chimaev has the tools to neutralize Strickland's jab by forcing him to constantly defend takedowns rather than establish rhythm.
On the other hand, former middleweight champion Michael Bisping sees the fight as more competitive than many assume. Bisping has highlighted Strickland's defensive discipline and experience in 5-round wars as key advantages. He notes that Strickland rarely overextends or panics under pressure, which could become crucial if Chimaev explodes early but fails to secure a finish. Bisping believes that Strickland's composure, combined with his ability to maintain a steady pace for 25 minutes, might expose potential cardio vulnerabilities in Chimaev. If Chimaev fades even slightly after intense early grappling exchanges, Bisping suggests Strickland could take over in rounds 4 and 5, turning the contest into a grinding battle of attrition. Welterweight contender Belal Muhammad has leaned more decisively toward Chimaev, particularly because of the grappling pressure. Muhammad, known for his own wrestling-heavy style, understands how draining constant takedown threats can be. He has stated that very few middleweights can survive Chimaev's first 2 rounds without being physically and mentally broken. From Muhammad's perspective, once Chimaev establishes top control, he doesn't just score points, he exhausts opponents and removes their confidence. Muhammad believes that if the fight consistently hits the mat in the early rounds, Chimaev's strength and positional dominance could be too much for Strickland to overcome. Meanwhile, former champion Robert Whittaker has offered a more balanced technical breakdown. Whittaker has emphasized that Strickland's awkward rhythm, durability, and mental toughness make him one of the most difficult fighters in the division to finish. He points out that Strickland doesn't give opponents many clean openings and rarely deviates from his game plan. According to Whittaker, if Strickland can avoid significant damage early and consistently return to center cage to re-establish his jab, he could gradually turn the fight into an uncomfortable, drawn-out contest. Whittaker believes that over 5 rounds, small moments accumulate, and if Chimaev slows down even slightly, Strickland's relentless forward pressure could shift the narrative late in the fight. From a historical perspective, Strickland has faced multiple top-level opponents and survived extended wars, which analysts consider a key factor in this matchup. His fights often go the distance, and he rarely loses composure regardless of the opponent's threat level. This experience contrasts with Chimaev, whose fights have often ended quickly, leaving questions about how he performs in a full 5-round bout. Pros suggest that Strickland's ability to absorb the early storm and force a longer fight could tilt the odds in his favor, especially if he can neutralize the wrestling advantage. Former UFC analyst and fighter Josh Koscheck has weighed in, suggesting that Strickland's persistence and volume striking could frustrate Chimaev in the later rounds. Koscheck believes that while Chimaev has unmatched grappling explosiveness, fighters with high fight IQ who make it past the first 2 rounds can start to capitalize on conditioning gaps and predictable tendencies. He points out that Strickland has historically been able to exploit opponents who expend too much energy early. Conversely, former champion Anderson Silva highlights Chimaev's aggressive dominance, stating that very few fighters can survive the first round of his top control and relentless pressure. Silva notes that Chimaev's combination of wrestling and striking is designed to dismantle opponents quickly, and those who fail to adapt early often struggle mentally and physically throughout the fight. Silva predicts that if Chimaev locks in early control, he will likely dictate the pace and outcome.
Former contender Darren Till adds a tactical perspective, emphasizing that this fight could hinge on timing and transitions. Till notes that Strickland's best path to victory is using his jab to keep Chimaev at distance, avoid early takedowns, and drag the fight into later rounds. If successful, the mental and physical toll of extended grappling exchanges could favor Strickland. However, Till warns that even one early mistake against Chimaev could lead to a quick finish, giving the champion
champion's explosive top control and power. Finally, veteran analyst Luke Rockhold has predicted a close but slightly favorable edge for Chimaev. Rockhold explains that Chimaev's ability to blend wrestling with striking, combined with his finishing instincts, makes him the most likely winner if he maintains his aggressive strategy. Rockhold emphasizes that the fight would be won or lost in the first 10 minutes. If Strickland survives that initial onslaught, the later rounds could belong to him, but failure to defend takedowns early could end the fight decisively. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to stay up to date with all the latest UFC news, fight predictions, and fighter analysis, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you in-depth fight breakdowns, expert opinions, and all the behind-the-scenes insights you won't find anywhere else. Don't miss out on the next big matchup. Subscribe now and join our community of fight fans who stay ahead of the action.